Okay, question from me. Ready? Okay.
Sure.
So in Google Post, there were two concepts introduced: subtopics and what we call it, passage ranking, right? So these two concepts were introduced, and I was thinking, what is the intersection between this concept? And I gave up. Okay, I was thinking they can really be interconnected, and my idea was, okay, subtopics allows Google to pick what it calls subtopics, and then passages allows it to rank. Would you agree, or?
I'm not sure how we introduce subtopics. I know that we have something in the filters in the search interface, but I'm not super sure. How did we describe subtopics here?
It's described like a big chunk of the SERP disambiguation. So if I search for cashmere, we can do cashmere sweaters, women's cashmere.
Right. That's right. Okay, now I know what you mean. Yes, that's part of the query understanding, and that allows us to give you alternative ways of basically zooming into the content. So it's more of an understanding thing, whereas passages is a ranking thing. So we are saying, like, this is not just, this entity is not related to these other entities, and this might be a search intention, this might be a slightly different search intention. That's what subtopics would do. And then we have the passages, which is more like, there's this gigantic document, and this part of the document is what you might be interested in this query. The rest of the document is not that relevant to your specific query, so we might pull this out specifically into a search result.
So I'm a bit confused, though, about the way you have it divided in the way you talk about it, because in the announcement, they talk, I know you weren't part of the announcement, but in the announcement, they talk about passages as it relates to understanding, and they talk about BERT. So you're saying passages aren't understanding, but
the problem
like
here
they
is,
are little.
Okay, so the problem is there's like lots of smaller systems talking to each other, so everything is blurry. There is no clear separation between the things. But for me, how I look at it is when we talk about passages as a thing that you see in search results ranking, that requires that we understand the document, of course. Like we can't say like, oh, this passage is about this thing if we don't understand that. But then there's this other understanding, which is more like, how does this relate to things, and how does this get disambiguated from other and similar topics or similar entities? In the sense that, as you say, Kashmir could be a region of India. It could also be clothing related. It could also just be the fabric itself. It can be different kinds of clothing. All of these are familiar or similar concepts, but extracting these concepts and extracting how this relates to each other is a separate process internally for us than it is to understand what this page is about. That's completely, it's related, but it's completely separate processes. And yes, both of that actually uses BERT because we need to understand the human language. Without natural language understanding, we can't do either of these things. But in this case, passages are a ranking feature where we say like, oh, so this page covers these 5 different topics, and one of the topics is this specific tomato kind, for instance, that as you used the example for gardening. Whereas the rest of the page talks about cucumbers and gardening in general and vegetables and nutrition. It's not the same as subtopics where we would say like, oh, so this specific tomato, so you might be interested in tomatoes or fruits or whatever is related to that specific tomato. If it's coming from a specific geographical region, then that might be a thing. Using the same systems or the same principles, natural language understanding, BERT, but basically resulting in different outcomes or different parts of the search result page in the end.